In the late 17th century, a prolonged trade rivalry between England and the Republic of the United Netherlands had reached a crisis point. This conflict primarily stemmed from economic differences, with English merchants seeking to expand their dwindling trade at the expense of the flourishing Dutch commerce. For many years, the two nations had been fierce competitors in various global markets, including East and West Indies, America, Africa, and the Mediterranean. Historical tensions, such as the Dutch fishermen's activities near the English coast and England's desire for recognition of its maritime supremacy, had fueled disputes for over 150 years. The English Civil War from 1642 to 1649, in which the Dutch supported the king's faction, further strained relations. Upon emerging victorious in the English Civil War, Oliver Cromwell, as protector of the Protestant English state, hoped for closer ties between the two Protestant-led nations to counter the still powerful Catholicism in Europe. However, the Dutch government was reluctant to forge a strong alliance with the young English Republic. The Navigation Act of 1651, which effectively excluded the Dutch from significant freight trade with England, worsened economic tensions, making war appear inevitable. While the Dutch authorities did not actively seek war, the Orangists within the Netherlands hoped that a conflict would emphasize the need for a strong leader from the House of Orange. During the 17th century, the Dutch naval forces faced challenges as they lacked a unified leader since the death of Willem II. Furthermore, after the death of Willem, there was significant internal discord within the Netherlands. The absence of a stadtholder, particularly in a period of turmoil, made the state's government highly unpopular among the population, especially among those loyal to the House of Orange, including many sailors. Given their geographical positions, any war would primarily be a naval one. The situation escalated when Dutch Admiral Tromp clashed with English Admiral Blake near Dover in 1652 over the issue of lowering flags. This incident led to mutual complaints and made it clear that war was becoming unavoidable. English merchants, in particular, eagerly anticipated the war, hoping to plunder Dutch trade routes and diminish the Netherlands' global dominance. The English had advantages in the conflict, including control of key sea routes and a more unified naval force. England's navy had grown significantly during the Commonwealth period, with well-armed and manned ships. As the war officially began in the early summer, Tromp sailed with a fleet in July to the English coast, attempting to intercept and defeat an English squadron under English Admiral Ayscue in Douarns. This action aimed to counter the English's primary goal of disrupting Dutch trade through the English Channel. Ayscue had already caused significant damage to Dutch trade in the English Channel, particularly concerning the expected arrival of silver ships from Spain carrying a substantial amount of valuable metal. Recognizing the urgent need to protect Dutch trade, the States General decided to form a new fleet to protect the Dutch trade and counter the English's interference in the English Channel. On July 18th, Vice Admiral Witte Cornelis de Witt was appointed to lead this new fleet, which comprised hastily converted merchant vessels and privately equipped ships. However, most experienced commanders were initially with Tromp's fleet in the North Sea, making them unavailable for immediate service. Looking for somewhat able commanders, the Zeeuw's Admiralty approached a retired merchant sailor with some naval combat experience, Michiel de Ruyter, for service. He initially refused. His refusal was partly due to his strong desire for a peaceful retirement, and also because he was aware of the shortcomings of the Dutch naval forces. He understood that the newly formed fleet, like Tromp's, would consist of largely inferior ships with insufficient artillery and a shortage of sailors. However, he eventually relented, albeit for a single sea voyage. Consequently, de Ruyter was appointed as the new fleet's vice-commander in early August. His fleet eventually consisted of 22 ships and 6 fireships, with a total of around 3,300 crew members. In August, de Ruyter embarked on his mission, departing from the Wielingen even before a convoy of 70 merchant ships from Texel had arrived due to reports of Ayscue's departure with around 40 ships from Douarns. He patrolled the Flemish coast for several days, awaiting the merchant ships, and assumed command in the absence of de Witt. De Ruyter was concerned about the poor condition of many of his ships due to insufficient guns and crew, with the States General and the Zeeuwse Admiralty keeping his alarming letters secret to prevent panic. On August 12th, he learned of Ayscue's fleet in the English Channel, with Ayscue already capturing Dutch merchant vessels. De Ruyter detached 3 ships to protect a merchantman, but lost 2 in the process. Finally, on August 21st, he met the convoy. Among these merchant ships were about 10 warships that had escorted them from Texel. 6 of them were proper warships, and 2 were escorting the merchant fleet to the Mediterranean after it passed through the English Channel. So de Ruyter now had command over 30 warships and around 60 merchant vessels. On August 15th, the English spotted the Dutch fleet near Plymouth and set sail. The English fleet, led by Ayscue, had approximately 38 warships, 4 smaller vessels, and 4 fire ships armed with 1,100 cannons and crewed by around 4,300 men. It was undoubtedly stronger than the Dutch fleet under de Ruyter. De Ruyter hoisted his command flag on the Zeeland ship Neptunus, a vessel equipped with 28 guns and a crew of 134 men. The following day, around 13:30 off the coast of Brittany, Ayscue, having the advantage of wind, initiated the battle against de Ruyter, who was carefully protecting his merchant ships. He hoped to scatter the Dutch convoy, making it easier to capture valuable prizes. However, de Ruyter unexpectedly separated his naval squadron and changed course to confront Ayscue's attack. Some of these merchant ships, which were typically armed against pirates, became involved in the battle. The English primarily targeted the merchant vessels. While Ayscue's ships were generally more heavily armed, they were disorganized due to some of the fastest vessels, including Ayscue's flagship George and Vice Admiral William Haddock's Vanguard, breaking formation in pursuit of straggling Dutch merchant ships during a running battle. This resulted in their inability to form a line of battle and fully exploit their firepower advantage over the Dutch. On the other hand, the Dutch squadron, sailing to the northwest, formed a defensive leeward line formation. The Frisian Rear Admiral Joris Pieterszoon van den Broek commanded the van, de Ruyter led the center, and Dutch Rear Admiral Jan Ertsen Verheerf commanded the rear. At around 16 o'clock, the Dutch fleet and 7 leading English vessels encountered each other and quickly passed through, with both sides claiming to have broken the enemy line. After gaining the weather gauge, the Dutch attacked from the north, resulting in a chaotic melee. The battle was fierce and furious, with both sides fighting vigorously. Ayscue attacked de Ruyter twice, slicing through his entire fleet with 6 or 7 ships during each attack. De Ruyter, in return, also fought twice, leading his ships through the English lines in a heated struggle. Eventually, de Ruyter positioned himself between Ayscue and his Vice Admiral Haddock, with only 6 or 7 ships accompanying him. The slower remainder of the English fleet, mainly consisting of poorly trained hired merchantmen, was not eager to engage after reaching the battle scene, despite their numerical advantage. Consequently, the English couldn't capitalize on their superior numbers. The English fireship Charity, commanded by Captain Simon Orton, had to set itself on fire to fend off attacking Dutch vessels during the retreat. At that time, each captain in the Dutch fleet fought independently, primarily looking after the ships in their own squadron, while adhering to their instructions to provide support. The largest Dutch vessel, the Dutch East India Company warship Vogelstruis, heavily armed by Dutch standards, became separated from the rest of the Dutch fleet and was attacked by 3 English ships. It was almost boarded and close to surrendering when its captain, Douwe Oaks, threatened to blow up the ship. Faced with this threat, the crew rallied, repelled the English boarding team, and fought so fiercely that the English vessels, badly damaged with 2 in sinking condition, abandoned the attack. De Ruyter regretted not having his fireships with him, as he believed he could have decisively defeated the enemy if he had. The Dutch employed a tactic of disabling enemy vessels by targeting their masts and rigging with chain shot. In the late afternoon, Ayscue decided to disengage from the unsuccessful engagement and retreat to Plymouth to repair his ships before they became too damaged. The English had suffered heavy losses, but only lost one fireship, with casualties of around 600 to 700 men. Dutch losses in terms of crew were relatively small, with 50 to 60 dead and 40 to 50 wounded as per de Ruyter's journal. Most of de Ruyter's captains, except for a few who had shown cowardice, performed admirably. The need to care for scattered merchant ships, some of which had sought refuge along the French coast, along with the damage sustained, prevented de Ruyter from further engaging the enemy immediately. Darkness fell, and no further action could be taken that evening. Ayscue's fleet also remained visible, but started retreating. By the following morning, the two fleets were still 2.5 miles apart. However, the damaged English fleet retreated to Plymouth, apparently too battered to renew the battle. The next day, news of Blake's 72-ship fleet sailing westward in the Channel arrived. The Dutch abandoned any plans for attack, opting instead to safeguard the homeward-bound merchant ships between the Scilly Islands and Bretagne. De Ruyter struggled with deteriorating ships, limited provisions, and disciplinary issues among his captains and crews, but maintained a vigilant watch. Storms scattered his fleet at times, and after a month, the council decided to cautiously return home with some captured Spanish and other Westfarders, avoiding Blake's fleet. They later learned that Blake had passed them, and Ayscue's fleet, plagued by troubles in Plymouth, ultimately disbanded. De Ruyter later rendezvoused with De With's fleet and continued the campaign under his command, facing numerous challenges and shortages on their journey. The Battle of Plymouth was marked by a tactical draw, launched de Ruyter's career, and led to Ayscue's resignation. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please leave a like, it really helps out the channel. If there is a topic, battle, or person you would like to know more about, let me know your thoughts in a comment. I would also like to thank all my patrons and channel members for their generous support. If you enjoy House of History and you want to support my work, consider joining me on Patreon. For just $1 per month, you will already gain early access to all my videos without any in-video advertisements. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.